Welcome to Worthy Ones, the video series where I take all the latest issue ones and deem them worthy or not worthy. Guys, I'm Mike Spider Slayer. Welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0. If you like me helping you make decisions on what comic books to buy and you love daily comic book content, why don't you consider hitting that subscribe button? So before we dive into it, guys, I just got a quick shout out to a Kickstarter that just launched, still has 29 days to go, and this is done by Mark Spears and Frank Zanka. You guys, they're two great artists here. One that just released the Monster series and done Monster cards, that's Mark Spears, and Frank Zanka, who has come up with his own comics from Destiny Horizons. These two have done this collaboration to bring out Mythlord's classic monsters deck building card game. That's right, guys. So if you like universal monster like creatures and you want to see them in a deck building game, this is it. It has all the classic monsters: Dracula, Frankenstein. It's got the alpha werewolf and the creature from the deep and the wicked witch. And this game has 1 to 4 players, ages 12 to plus, takes about 20 minutes per player to play a game. It is absolutely awesome. So why don't you consider backing the Kickstarter today? Again, it's got 29 days to go. So the first book we're talking about today is The Creeping Below, issue 1. It is October, it's spooky time. There's going to be a lot of scary books with monsters in them. This one is 28 pages, $5, written by Brian Azzarello. The artwork is done by Vanessa R. Del Rey. The artwork is, very dark, I would say, and it's very fitting for this type of book because, it focuses around this death metal band, right? And you get this groupie that idolizes the group, and we get to see them in concert, and you get to see him sing, and says all the bad words and satanic rituals and things like that. And you get to see her hang out with the band, and they go out into this like creepy forest, and then the next thing you wind up seeing is the woman gets like killed by some Satan-like creature, and then she becomes something much more, right? So, yeah, this book for me was not worth it. And it wasn't a horrible story, right? But it's one of those stories where it's like, it's very cliche, right? When I was younger, I used to listen to heavy metal and some death metal bands, and it was like those days where it was like, oh, you support Satan, right? You worship him, and that's kind of what this death metal band is about, right? They actually go to this satanic thing that actually happens, and this girl suffers the ultimate consequence. It's a little bit of an interesting story, but there wasn't here enough to hook me because the bandmates weren't really interesting here. Like, there's one guy that was talking to the groupie, and he doesn't even hardly speak English. Now, I know it's part of like the thing for them, but I don't know. I didn't find it that interesting. And is this girl going to be the main character going forward? So it does a decent job at hooking you at the end to show you that this girl is still possibly alive, but it's just something that's not next level for me to where I'm going to continue to read it. So at the end of the day, I'm going to give this one a C-. Wasn't the most horrible thing I read, but not the most interesting either. Star Wars: The Battle of Jakku, Insurgency Rising, issue 1. This was mentioned to me by the webheads going, Mike, you have to review this book. Take one for the team. I haven't been a fan of Star Wars books in a long time, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God, really? And I did it for the show, and we'll get my thoughts here. This book is 40 pages for the price of $5. This book is written by Alex Seguria, and the art is done by Leonard Kirk. Now, listen, when it comes to a brand new series, and it's Star Wars, and you're kind of rebranding it and having it take place after the Return of Jedi, and you want people to jump on board, I just feel like you need a little bit better of an artist here. The artwork is not like horrible in any stretch of the imagination, but I just feel like it lacks detail. Like, think about if you had a lot more detail that goes into this character's face, and just that, and like, what you see from the Death Star, and just like details of maybe Vader's helmet when it's all burnt up. Like, it just lacks things, you know? And so I was a little bit taken back by that. But as I started to read the story, I did start to enjoy it more because it literally takes place the moment after the Death Star is basically destroyed. Our heroes are still on Endor. We get to see Han taking off, you know, getting to do his thing. And right away, you go to this different sector where the Empire actually is, and you get to see the next I guess, guys in charge here of the Empire. And you get introduced to Bra, who is like a, you know, heavy, like, stormtrooper, I would say, slash Darth Vader-like character. He's very, like, menacing looking. He's big, he's bulky. I'm trying to find a page here. Yeah, he looks like this, okay? And so he's intimidating, right? And then you get introduced to the new Moff, who is known as Governor Urbik Adlard, and he's a dude that has like this beard, and you almost think like he would be somebody from like the Rebel Alliance at one time. But at the end of the book, you get introduced to him on his backstory and how he became the higher ranks of the Empire. And you get introduced to the female, which is her, who seems to be like, you know, very lighthearted, maybe could be a traitor later on in the future. I don't know. And her name is Ryan Zanat. So in this comic book, you get introduced to them. The big thing is that this guy is in denial that the Empire or the war is over. Just because Darth Vader and Palpatine are gone, he's like, we never say that these guys are gone. They're always here. And if you do, it's treason and you'll be cast away. But he is the next one in charge. And it looks like he's going to be leading the Empire. And this book was actually worthy. Yeah, it surprised me. The story was great. I want to see how it continues and how we get, you know, closer and closer to, you know, Kylo Ren and all those other characters like that. So definitely, guys, I think you should pick this up. I think this is a breath of fresh air for a lot of Star Wars fans out there because, listen, I was a kid. I was a Star Wars fan. It's one of the first things that I liked that led me into all this stuff. So I like that we have an interesting comic book for this, you know, new, you know, whatever it is. This new jumping on point, right? So really good stuff here. If I had to grade this one, I'm going to give this one a solid B. I can't give it higher than that because of the artwork. I just feel like the artwork could, you know, take you out of it. There's the backup story in here, which I think the artwork is a little bit better. But yeah, so if you're looking for a Star Wars book right now, I think this is the one to pick up. Storm, issue 1. This book has 40 pages for $5. Legacy numbering 12. Why even put that on there? There's just no point, right? Our writer here, I'm not even going to attempt to say the names because I just can't. Except the artist here is done by Lucas Wernick. The art is so gorgeous in this comic book. Like, Storm looks beautiful, right? Costume looks nice. There's a lot of great action scenes in this comic. I mean, it is just a beautiful comic book to look at, and just all the situations that happen in here are really nice, and a beautifully well done, well illustrated comic book. I can't say enough about it. Now, when it comes to the story here, we wind up seeing, you know, Storm making a speech in the beginning, and then we wind up seeing her team up with Frenzy in this comic book, and then she's kind of rescuing a mutant. At first, they thought it was a nuclear meltdown, and yeah, and then they wind up rescuing this kid right here. And it was kind of very touching because this kid just got his powers and it should be a happy time, and he's just killing people and things like that. And then we go back to like more narration and more talking and more speech stuff. And then I was kind of taken aback by that part of it. Was it a horrible comic book? No, absolutely not. I think for a lot of people, this book is going to be worthy. For me, however, I'm not going to continue to pick this up. I just think there's too many like solo books when it comes to our X-Men characters, and I didn't it was like, it was good, it was pretty okay, but it just wasn't like fantastic for me. And by the time I got done reading it, I was like practically falling asleep at that point too. So it had its moments, but it's just one of those things that I don't think I'm going to miss it when I don't continue to read it. So I think at the end of the day, I'm going to give this one a C+. It was pretty good, beautiful artwork, but the story was, it was okay for me. Goobers, issue 1. This book is $5. It's written by Cody Ziegler and the art is done by Orion Lee. So the reason why I picked up this book is because I wanted to see what Cody Ziegler would do in an independent side of things, and he's doing such a great job with Miles Morales, Spider-Man, and Deadpool. So I wanted to say, I wanted to see what this was, right? And again, I've said it 1,000 times. I'm a horror guy. I love zombie books, and I wanted to see what his take on it was. So here is the interior artwork. It is goofy. It's cartoony. We wound up getting to see just crazy facial expressions on the cast of characters that are in this book. The monsters themselves, when you see them, they look a little bit grotesque, but I would want... I don't know. I was looking for something a little bit different here. And what this book wind up reminding me of is like Invasion or the Body Snatchers or something like that. That's what this reminded me of. So it kind of looked like that. Now, this was one page that was quite interesting here. But what did I think about the story here? So with the story is we wind up getting to see a cast of family. They're going back to their hometown. They rented an Airbnb, and they run into some friends and family and be like, hey, you want to hang out? And there's just a lot of dialogue. I just felt like there was a lot of like almost unnecessary dialogue. Like we're driving in the car, we're going grocery shopping, we meet the friend, and I'm like, let's go. I'm like, where are we going here? And then you wind up seeing the town drunk who's a little bit infected, and it just was really kind of slow paced. And when I originally got to the first monster here, I was like, I don't know, man, it doesn't seem scary or horrific to me at all. And I was like, okay. So at the end of the day, it's not worth it. It's not worthy. Yes, it is a comic book where I was expecting something a little bit darker, a little bit creepier, and it just felt a little bit too light for me for what it was. So not what I was looking for when it comes to a horror book. And so I'm going to give this one a C-, not Cody Ziegler's best work. So unfortunately, I will not be continuing this. Our next book we're talking about is DC Horror Presents Creature Commandos, issue 1. This book is 32 pages for the price of $5. This book is labeled as a 17 plus, but there wasn't anything really here in the comic book where I was like, really? There was one curse word. Shit. And that is it. Otherwise, you get your typical violence that you would see in a normal cartoon in a comic book, right? The artwork looks pretty good. It has that, darker tone to it because it is a book filled with monsters. There is some violent scenes in here. And so, yeah, like I said, it was fine. And this was your basic standard comic book of assembling a team. Just like you would see your team of X-Men, your team of Avengers, your Justice League team, right? But here we get the Creature Commandos. You get introduced to Lucky. You get introduced to the Medusa character, Vincent Velcro, who is a vampire, and you wind up getting to see a werewolf in here. And they were recruited to do a particular mission, right? And then there's your field commander right here. And just things don't seem as quite as they would by the time you wind up getting to the end of the comic, and you get a particular enemy that we recently saw a few issues back before Absolute Power kicked in. So that's just a little hint. But at the end of the day, I'm going to give this book the worthy recommendation. There was a lot of you out there that were waiting to see if they should pick this book up after my review, right? And I think this book is pretty okay. I mean, it's a little bit better than average. So I'm going to give it a C+. It's your typical point A to point B. We've seen it before. It's kind of like Suicide Squad, but with monsters. Take that info for what it's worth, right? So check it out. I wound up getting the Jim Lee cover, so in case it sucked, at least I got a cool cover. But it's okay, and it's worth checking out issue 2. Hyde Street, issue 1, published by Image. It's the Ghost Machine imprint, yet to disappoint. This is a series premiere. 32 pages, $4, written by Jeff Johns, penciler Ivan Reis. Man, let me tell you, when it comes to the artwork, his artwork is so well done. I mean, all these books from Ghost Machine, the artwork is well done, right? Here we get to learn about the X-Ray character. So that's the prominent character in this comic book. And then we get introduced to the Boy Scout, which his name is Pranky. And it has its own distinct feel to it. Now, it's not really horrific or creepy or bloody per se yet. I think it will get there. But we kind of get introduced to these two main characters here. And if you go onto High Street, then you wind up suffering these consequences. And there's a person that's in charge, and these guys are like fighting for deaths, right? And whatever death you wind up getting a point on the scoreboard, which was quite interesting. And it all started off with Pranky the Boy Scout, as he's like finds out what this old lady did to her husband and her kids and stuff like that. He wins, and then he winds up getting the steamroller badge of honor, which was hilarious. But then we get introduced to Mr. X-Ray, like I said, in the comic, and he is a great character here. A man that has, done some bad things, and you kind of want to learn more about him and how he's gotten to this Hyde Street, right? And he's kind of like that, 1960s seller where he's trying to be persuasive. He's a businessman, and we kind of got to see where he was at in this comic, Very, very interesting. And again, like I said, it takes a scoreboard, a tally of all souls that have been taken or deaths that have been taken, and then we're going to go on to like the next character, I guess. So this book at the end is absolutely worth it. I think Jeff Johns' Ghost Machine print is pretty well done here. Characters seemed interesting, has just enough horror in it to keep it creepy. I think it's going to get more intense as time goes along, and at the end of the day, I'm going to give this one a B+. Not as solid as I would say Geiger or I would say Rook Exodus, right? But it has that potential. Even Redcoat for me right now is like an A comic, but it didn't start that way. So I want to see the development of this book and where it goes. I'm happy the way it is because it's not quite like a 3-story anthology book. It kind of has an overarching major story here, which I could appreciate. I got Justice League Watchtower access. Do you have access? Yes, guys, the next book we are going to be talking about is DC All In. Listen, this is the book that I think you guys should get when it comes to DC Comics. This is the time where we kind of relaunching things, or I wouldn't say relaunching, but driving this new initiative to get DC readers back on board again. And I couldn't have been more excited because I think DC needed something very big. And when I did my most pulled comics for the week, it wasn't on the top 5. It trended lower, and I was like, man, did people really give up on DC altogether, right? So hopefully after this review and maybe other YouTubers that do reviews on this book, maybe you will change your minds, okay? So this book is 64 pages for the price of $5. Again, $5, $4 is where we're at with comics these days. But when you get 64 pages for $5, I felt that was pretty good, okay? This book is done by Joshua Williamson, Scott Snyder, Art is done by Dan Mora, Daniel Sampre, Wes Craig, and there's two sides to this story, in case you guys did not know that. It's a flip book, okay? So first story, you wind up going to get the heroes side of things here. Artwork absolutely gorgeous, as you get to see all your different cast of characters, and there's going to be spoilers here a little bit so I can get the full effect of this review to see, you know, to get you guys to pick this book up, okay? And then when you flip it on the other side, you're going to get the dark side of things, okay? Because this is a very dark side centric event on why the absolute universe is created here, okay? So you wind up getting to see the point of view of him as well, which I didn't think was as strong as the hero side artistically and story-wise, but it was still cool to see because you do get introduced to your different cast of characters like, you know, Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman here. So definitely still read that if you do decide to pick this up. But the big thing is here is when you read this comic book, you have that feeling of togetherness, like cohesiveness when it comes to the DC all universe, all in initiative here, because we bring back the Justice League Unlimited, we bring back the Watchtower, and we wind up seeing our cast of characters get the Justice League Watchtower Security Access Code or card, right? And it opens up with Superman going to Booster Gold, and he gets this card, and he's just all happy about it, right? And then you wind up seeing this great scene of all your DC heroes together, and Superman giving this speech, how this is a new time, a new era, how Amanda Waller split us apart, and we need to be more together than ever. And it was awesome. It was so good to see all these cast of characters together once again. And then you wind up seeing Darkseid enter the picture, and I'll let you guys read that on what his MO is here, but it eventually created this rift to the new absolute universe, and you see why these new characters like Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman exist, right? So really good stuff. And then it focuses around, you know, Booster Gold being in this world. So this book, guys, is absolutely worthy. You must pick this up. Now, whether it continues, you know, the steam, does it produce A+ books going forward? Don't know, right? But nevertheless, it's a good book to read right here, and it's off to a good start. I do have people asking me, where do I get these cards? And if you have a local comic shop and if you buy All In Special, they should be able to give you this for free while supplies last. And then if you buy other All In comic books, there'll be a card each week. Okay, so that's how you get these cards. I don't know if you can get them online, but that's how I wound up getting mine. But at the end of the day, this book is going to be an A+ for me. My favorite read by far. Probably my favorite DC comic book that I have read in years. It was awesome. Really enjoyed it. Definitely a recommend. Go pick it up. And there you have it, webheads. There are my thoughts on this week's newest issue ones. Do you agree? Do you disagree? If you disagree, that's totally fine, man. That's what makes this hobby so much fun. I'm just a guy that's on YouTube that shares his opinions. And if you love the content, guys, there's always more content right here for you to click on. And remember, support the local comic shops. Keep buying, keep collecting, but always read the comics so we got a great comic conversation just like we did today.